Hello, in this video I'll go over creating dynamic vegetation with landscape canvas. I've downloaded the dynamic vegetation sample. After moving the dynamic vegetation sample to the dev directory, in the project configurator, I've enabled the landscape canvas gems and its dependencies. The dynamic vegetation sample project has plenty of assets to get started with. So I've created a small 128 by 128 world, and in it I'll create several different samples try to use most of the tools in landscape canvas. You can see how it is. For the first example, I want to do something simple. I'd like to put some trees on the level, but I want there to be more trees on the top of the hill than there are at the bottom. So I'll go to Tools and open up Landscape Canvas. Start, create a new asset. I'll always need some sort of shape and a spawner. Shape, make a box, connect its bounds. In the spawner, I'll select a tree from the Vegetation Samples project. Save the project here. And there we go. The trees spawn in the box. To keep things organized, I'm going to start naming these items. This will be high oaks. And I like to create slices from everything today. So I'll name it that way. Here we have the spawner. I'm going to keep on using the slice name for everything here, just in case I end up using this slice as part of another slice. Alright, let's go back in there, just select the high oak slice and hit edit again. That was too many trees in one place, so the first thing I'll do is add a distance between filter. Click on that, set the radius, the minimum radius, between 3 and 5. We'll take a look at its effect. It's better. So now I want the trees to spawn according to altitude, so I'll bring in an altitude gradient. Connect bounds to the preview bounds and the altitude gradient. You can see the effect. It's not much of one, but there it is. Next we'll throw in two noises. Almost always need at least one form of noise, and often two. One a random noise, a small scale noise, and one large scale noise to make things look more random. Good thing to do immediately is regenerate so you're getting a random seed and you're not starting from the same point. So I have a fine grain noise. I want larger scale noise, and this is probably close enough. We'll take a look at some of the other options. Yeah, we'll try that. Use the mixer next. Connect all of the gradients in and the preview bounds. Go into the mixer properties. Both types of noise are coming through. We need to look at the altitude gradient. It looks like the maximum altitude isn't set yet, so I'll take another look at the level. And looks like its top value is about 20, ranges from 0 to 20. Go back into the slice. That's much better. And in the gradient you can see that it's lighter over here. So in the spawner now, I'll add a distribution filter, which requires a gradient. See the overall effect of that. Okay, opacity will be a great tool to make changes towards the end of a process. We can find the point where that changes easily, and we've achieved some of that effect, filtering off at altitude. We'll organize the project again, naming these. This is the mixer. I like to create one child entity here called gradients, in this case high oaks gradients. And I put all of the mixers and noise in there. So in all my slices, I'll have just a gradient spawner and a patch. Now I'd like to see how it looks across the whole terrain. So I'll add another box. I'll put it in the middle of the map. Make sure it's high enough to cover everything. Work. Move the spawner. I'll select the world box as the reference shape. There we go. So now I'll go back into landscape canvas now that everything's organized. I can see the change across the whole landscape, and we'll see about some other modifications we can make to how this is spawning. Go to the high oak slice and enter landscape canvas. Another nice thing to stay organized is these lists can get fairly long. Once I'm done with a particular component, I may hide it. So if I know I'm not going to add any more types of vegetation assets, I'll hide that. Maybe look through some settings, finalize them, and hide it. Under the spawner, I can add other extenders. Definitely want the position, perhaps the rotation modifier, and scale. Slope would be a good one for a lot of things, but I'm thinking trees generally grow straight up, so I'll leave that out of this one. Random noise is great for a lot of things. You've got to be careful about where you use it and whether you're using it on everything. Some other tip from the documents regarding this. The tip is contained within the adding scale, rotation, and position modifier section of the Lumberyard user guide. If we use the same noise for the X and Y offsets for randomized position, we'll shift things in the diagonal rather than two random directions. So we can produce a swizzle effect, which we'll use in this asset that I'm creating right now. connect random noise to the inbound gradient for the position modifier and click on the position modifier to enter its settings. Under position Y, advanced, I'll enable transform and enter the values that were on the web page. So, last thing is the scale modifier. And we're sort of encountering the same problem here. Use the same random noise for X that I've used for scale and the rotation. So every time something is shifted a similar value in the X direction, it will also be rotated the same value and scaled the same value. Probably more obviously, things rotated a certain way will be bigger. We could also put possibly this was along this. Okay. So now the X and Y values aren't sharing exact same values, even though they use the same gradient, and neither are the rotation and the scale modifiers. Get close to some of these, take a last look. The scale isn't being modified at all. So change that. Between 75% and 125%. Back in the level, we can see some of the changes made. Definitely have rotational differences. The position looks pretty random, and I'm sure scale is there too. Got ways to control through opacity. The altitude gradient could change as well. So this is pretty much done. I'd like to save this as a slice now. Perhaps the last thing I'll do is change the spawner, its reference shape, to be saved back to the patch, which will be part of the slice. That's good. So that done, we'll move on to a second asset. Now I'd like to create some grass, some patchy grass that covers the majority of the terrain. I'd like to use a couple different types of grass, but I want the different types to be clumped together. So I'll try to do something like that. And where the grass isn't located, I'd like to have some bushes in those areas. So hopefully when I'm finished with this asset, it'll pretty much cover everything. It'll look like very populated vegetation wise. So I've hidden this slice and create actually I'll open landscape canvas again and create an entity from there. Start creating this asset the same as before by adding a box shape, giving it some dimensions, spawner, this has the asset list, so I'll choose, I want two different grasses, and I'll choose those now. Been using the atlas, vegetation assets, grass atlas. All right. So those two are set. We can take a look real quick. Control F4, Alright, just the patch. Looks like just one asset is coming through right now. That makes sense. I'll name these and go back in to landscape canvas. Got a feeling this one's going to be larger, so I'm going to use the utilities. I'll use node groups to keep organized. The first one, I will just put the noises, the first round of noises that I'm going to use in. I'll add those now. And here I'm just trying to go for that clumpy shape that I've got in my mind. So I'll take a look at Berlin noise, I'll take a look at fast noise. I think there's two ways to get larger scale noise values, and I know we'll need a random noise at some point, so I'll just throw that in there. Change the seeds so I don't forget. And now I'll take a look at these and see, I better connect the bounds first. See how that changes the scale. That'll be reflected in the final asset. So for large, got the Berlin doesn't have a different type, so we'll take a look at what going down below one would look like. Does it look like you can? Okay. Oh, frequency was what I was thinking. All right, that's clumpy looking. Let's go to fast noise. Okay. I'll mix these two and see if I've got something close to what I'm looking for. We set the first one that you load up will be initialized by default, which is if that's the one you want to start with, you should definitely connect that first. It'll be set up, and then everything else is set to average by default. There's not a whole lot of definition here, so I'll take a look at a couple of these. So I've got something here. I think these black areas could be where the bushes are spawning in, and everything else with some color values could be the mix of the two grasses. Maybe I can get these lighter areas to be one kind of grass and another. So we'll add a vegetation asset weight selector to the spawner. Now that we have two different assets to choose from, you'll need this component to have the system decide when to place one over the other. And I'll add a distribution filter. And I'll use the same gradient. Save it and take a look. Okay. So that's definitely getting closer to what I was thinking. I think I kind of like the grass in those spots rather. So we'll see about doing that in landscape canvas. We'll rename these before I go back in, same as before. So in the gradient mixer for the noises, I've changed it to linear dodge rather than subtract. And now I have white areas, and sort of those patchy areas where I wanted the grass. That's going into the distribution filter. I'll switch the weight selector back to the original noise, I guess. I'll take a look at that. Okay, I'll look at the distribution filter in the spawner first. Alright, yeah, that's all white. The opacity, okay. That's getting pretty close to what I was thinking. And now if I can have bushes sort of mixed in these plain areas, that's what I would like. And there's other modifiers to apply, but I think I'll take a look at the bushes next and then do some fine tuning to the overall scene. We'll add another node group, 2 more node groups. This one will be for the grass that I just finished. Put the spawner in there. And maybe this mixer too. Do the same for the bushes that I'll create now. And we'll add in a spawner for that. Connect the placement bounds. And I'll select an asset to start with. I don't mind if there's 1 or 2 in this one. Okay. Placement bounds. That'll put them everywhere, so we need to get the areas from this. If we invert that, we'll use a gradient mixer here. Just invert this last gradient that came out. Let's try putting this as the distribution filter for the bush spawner. We'll spawn them everywhere right now. Maybe I'll just turn opacity down to start. That'll still spawn a lot of bushes. So let's add in one more thing to cut this down a bit. Let's add a dither. This takes just a single gradient. There we go. It can be tough to get just the right settings. You've got, these are 2 major settings, 4x4 or 2x4, or 8x8 really. But fine changes will really let's just see how this is. Okay. Yeah, so still got strips of them. I think that's those blocks of 4x4 that are coming through. So we'll need to cut that down a bit. But otherwise, getting close. I'll rename these before going back into Landscape Canvas. I think an easy way to do this is just add in more noise to the signal that's getting fed into the dither to just cut down what's coming through. Could do opacity perhaps actually. See if we see any changes. No, not quite not quite enough. So yeah, we'll just cut that down. We'll add in the mixer. And the inverted gradient will be the first thing to be mixed. Actually, you know what? I never fed the dither into... Yeah, okay, still needs to be cut down. So in the mixer, I'll just add in, I'll subtract some of these noises that created before. Okay, that's gone. Alright, that cut down on that a lot. Probably have to take a look at opacity here. Nothing coming through quite. It's a bit too much out. There's a couple bushes. So we may need to add in a distance between filter right after this, but we'll see. Yeah, needs the distance between to stop that from happening, but otherwise just a couple of the patches are getting filled in that could be. So we'll add that in, rename this real quick. This is the second mixer for the bushes. And I've created that gradients child entity of the slice to organize things again. I have the bush specific ones named here, and I've renamed the grass spawner because now there's a bush spawner too. So I have four entities, top second level entities. So let's add in the distance between filter and take a look at the final modifiers to add to this. Three worked out well last time. I see that's it's cutting it out between the grasses too, which is fine, but I think we'll have to come down on that. Yeah. Maybe we'll see how this looks across the whole terrain. For that, we'll need to select both spawners and assign it to the world box. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely the coverage that I was imagining. We're close to it with the bushes. So go back in. So we've used two spawners and they're taking different settings so far, but one way to sort of reduce the complexity of your landscape canvas graph is to use the layer blenders. These take out the outbound areas from the spawners, and you can add most of the modifiers, or all the modifiers that you can add to a spawner, you can add to a blender. So anything that we could share between these two spawners, perhaps we could just throw on the blender instead. Rotation, scale, the position modifiers. I think all of those make sense. I'm not sure how the slope alignment modifier will look with the bushes, but let's start out with that. We'll take care not to use the same noise values for everything. So for X, I'll use this random noise. For scale, I'll use the same random noise. And rather than doing a swizzle this time, just create another gradient real quick. This is where it's important to generate a random seed. If I were starting from the same seed, I forgot to do that, then this wouldn't matter. Use that for the Y and the Z rotation. Slope alignment doesn't need anything to start. And we should look at the basic settings. Not X rotation, Z rotation. Scale needs to be set. Let's try between 1 and 2 this time. Blender set to foreground. Background's fine for all of this. Let's take a look. All right. I'm not sure, if this seems fine to me. Those bushes spawning that close together. Like that. Let's see how it looks with the. I'll rename these and see how it looks with the trees. Let's show the oak slice again and set the shape, reference shape to the world box. Should be seeing them. There they are. Okay. Yeah, okay. Two slices together. I'll reset the two spawners. Reset the two spawners to the patch and save off this as a slice. I'll set these two back to get another look. The last thing I'd like to add, take a look at the other options in Landscape Canvas. So I will create a new asset. At this point, take a look at most of the modifiers. Still have posterize and smooth step, threshold, constant to look at. Some of the shape and surface mass. But let's take a look at the blockers. Got mesh, static, and some standard blocker. This only takes placement bounds as a padding. It's a static blocker. This doesn't take anything, just a shape. The mesh blocker. Let's use the mesh blocker. Don't see placement bounds on this. It'll be the bounds of the mesh, I'm guessing. I have a boulder object, so let's add in the boulder and try to block vegetations with that. Will this work? Let's see. There's the bowling. Looks too small. It's fine. I'll give it a material. See if there's some sort of rock or stone. Perfect. Does it block? Something's happening. Alright, I got rid of that bush. A little hard to see happening with the grass, but I think it's happening there too. Can I scale this entity? Oh, yeah, it works. Alright. So I'll rename this boulder blockers. This is the easiest slice ever. And I think that's looking good for now. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.